indicate so, and roll call. Mrs. Cleary.
Present.
Mr. Kearney.
Present.
Mrs. Marr.
Present.
St. Ange.
Present.
Present. Craig McClellan. All committee members are present as of 6:01 p.m. This typically in-person public meeting is being held virtually, as has past meetings been, or as have past meetings been, given Governor Baker's declaration of state of emergency in the Commonwealth. The meeting is, however, being streamed live and recorded on Facebook, and it's being conducted, obviously, via Zoom. First agenda item is public comment. This, of course, is reserved for points or topics of discussion that are not already related to an item that is already on the agenda. This is a special meeting of the school committee. It's reserved almost exclusively for the final approval of the return to middle and high school. So there is one other issue we'll be discussing, which is the use of outdoor facilities. But other than that, if your comment doesn't relate to either one of those, please make the comment now. I haven't seen any as I've been talking, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is superintendent's report. And at this time, I turn the meeting over to our superintendent of schools, Dr. Patrick Sullivan. Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Chairman McClellan, and thank you, school committee, for attending this special school committee meeting with really the sole purpose of looking again at our full in-person plan for the middle and the high school. And we had asked to continue the process of looking into it, making sure that we can get all the needed furnishings, get everything in place, making sure that we had, clearance of protocols, and we are able to present where we are right now. And I'm going to share my screen, but I am joined once again by Principal Scott and Principal Mills. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining. And of course, we have Sue Owen, our Director of Finance and Operations, and Dr. Scollins here. And all of these individuals have worked exceedingly hard this week and the time in between when we last met to make sure that the plan that we felt confident about could really be realized. So I want to thank them for that. And of course, thank our custodians for moving in furniture. We now have a more full look with the furniture actually in the rooms, particularly at the high school. And we have plans to get all the furnishings in to meet the timeline. So that's all excellent news, and all the meetings have gone very well. So I'm just going to share, and I'm going to go fairly quickly through this, just kind of a recap of, if it's okay, Chair McClellan, of where we were from an operational standpoint and kind of where we are right now. And then at the end of this, I would ask for, your discussion and whatever you want to do in terms, obviously in terms of getting community input and all that. But at the end of it, we would be asking for a vote to return our students full in person at the middle school on April 5th with lunch. And that would be a model that we would hopefully hold for the remainder of the year. And then we'd be asking for a phased approach for our high school students, bring all of them in April 5th. But from April 5th until I believe it's April, is it 19th, the day before, 16th, the day before April break, the students would be in full person until 12:45, go home for lunch, have their last period virtually or remotely, I should say. And then when we're able to make sure we get all of our lunch configurations in and our furnishings in as we have ordered, we're hoping to get a tent that will be a really functional large tent that we're working on. And then we would bring all of the students back on the 26th, which is the day after April break, full in person with lunch at the high school. So we get into that specifically, but I'll be asking for a vote on that. And with that would also go the ability for us to just adjust the calendar to coincide with those plannings. So as you remember, what we talked about and Principal Mills and Principal Scott discussed and created with their teams, we talked about our major considerations for this move: remote learning options, quarantining, what we're going to do in those regards, our spacing, which has been more challenging at the middle and high school for sure. It's taken a lot of creativity and teamwork, scheduling, lunch, transportation, drop off and pick up, and our Boston students and how we'll be handling them. So just as a reminder, we had asked that families who wish to go full remote would contact Dr. Scollins last week. Or actually, was it earlier? It was, I guess the last time was Monday. And Dr. Scollins, can you give a quick update? Would you mind on where we stand with that?
Sure. We, at this point, we just have 3 families that would like to join, and with Tecca and Greenfield Commonwealth Virtual School. So we'll have to use both. We only have a couple of slots in Tecca. So, but yeah, had great conversations with families. So they will start that ball rolling now.
That's great. And just to be clear, that was 3 for the middle and high school total.
Correct.
So as you can see, there wasn't a huge appetite for it, but we were able to afford those families who wanted it that opportunity. I did make this point, and I was glad that Principal Mills and Principal Scott clarified this a bit. I do want to be clear that there should not be an expectation for synchronous nor concurrent learning for students who are not present in person. And that would be including during quarantining situations. Work will be provided, but it will most likely be asynchronous in nature. However, I say this, and there may be opportunities. Clearly, those students who are on quarantine, we just want to make sure we stay and keep that connection. But I want to make sure that folks know that we're really focusing our staff on handling the students in front of them. This is a return to in-person, and that's what we want to make sure that we focus on. So although we will be certainly connecting any students who have to quarantine, it may not be in a synchronous fashion. Spacing requirements. Remember that the updated guidance is to set desks at least 3 feet apart with student facing the same direction as a default. That means they can turn and talk and all that. But the distance is measured seat edge to seat edge, front to back and side to side. Remember, all of this is on the heels of the commissioner receiving the authority to determine that the learning model that would be counted for time on learning would be in-person learning, and he set dates for us to have to do this, which was technically, as a Commonwealth, it's April 5th for elementary, which we've achieved because we had them in March 1st. It's April 28th for our middle school students, and they've yet to determine what it's going to be for high school, but we all believe it's going to be early May at the latest. That's just conjecture, but that's kind of I think a pretty highly carried conjecture. With all students present, there'd be in the middle school, in terms of spacing, there would be a range of distance, but the shortest distance between students would be 3 feet from edge of seat to edge of seat. And we really don't anticipate spacing being an issue for our full return to in-person at the middle school. Principal Mills, certainly feel free to jump in here. This this particular picture I showed last time. This is an image of one of our larger rooms at a 3 foot distance, front to back and side to side. This picture I took just the other day. One of the things we did, and Principal Mills, maybe you can explain what this is, just so people can have a sense for it.
The middle school has 4 science labs, and you can see this is one of the science classrooms. You can see the counter space along the wall. We've always had lab tables, probably going back to when we were all in school, and you can picture sitting with a partner at a lab table. The tables were going to really handcuff us to as far as being able to socially distance kids. So we replaced the lab tables with desks, which enabled, in this case, this teacher to put the seats 3 feet apart as measured in between the seats, the seats themselves. I think in this room, I think the way this teacher had laid it out too, it might even actually be a little bit more than 3 feet. But we kept an eye to make sure that there was still access in the event of, say, a fire drill or an evacuation, that students are able to get up and leave along the sides. And this was one of the bigger sections we had, but with that social distance requirement, we had no problem getting everybody into the room, safely and within the guidance. So Like I said, this might have been one of the harder rooms for us as far as pressure testing, but it's worked out.
Great. And then at the high school, which we had already talked about being a little trickier because we have bigger kids and some larger numbers. With all students present, we have created pretty much the high school is set up, with the exception of the lunch areas that we're waiting furnishings for, when we are able to bring our high school students back for lunch if that's voted on. The desks are pretty much set up in the rooms. We have about 60 desks that are coming in over the next week that we're going to put in place. This is actually our principal, Scott. Feel free to narrate what we're seeing here.
So this is a typical English class. It's got 24 desks, seat edge to seat edge, measuring 3 feet. What some of the classes are going to do, and I think I spoke about this last time, is turn to face the other way, which is going to be limiting in classrooms like this that don't have whiteboards that way. So some of those rooms we've tried to relocate so there's at least some kind of whiteboard space that folks can use. But this is a pretty full class.
Yep, exactly. This is an art room. So we took the art tables out. You can talk about the purpose for that, Principal Scott, if you want.
Yeah, so the same reason that Mr. Mills mentioned about the science tables, and we had to do the same thing. All of our art rooms had these big square tables that we just couldn't fit too many kids in. They're also our biggest rooms. So some of these classes can be used to hold 30 kids at a much more reasonable layout than having to kind of shift the direction of the rooms and put kids in corners and stuff like that.
Very good. And this is a science room. As you can see, our science rooms are, I think it's safe to say, are amongst our smaller rooms in some cases because of the way some of the tables are situated for lab work and such. But this is a pretty typical science classroom that is set up fully at this point. Now our lunch. So we were able to order these nifty little tables because we did need more furnishings. And these are great because I think they're going to be very flexible in their use going forward. And this is where what our dining situation looks like in the lunchroom. I don't know, Principal Mills or Scott, if you have anything to say about this, but it's pretty self-explanatory. There's plenty of space here. These are actually a little more than 6 feet, but when I say plenty of space, I think it's safely spaced because remember, the kids will have their masks off and we do want to give them space and we want to make sure that we have them in the proper directions. So I feel really confident about this lunch situation. And then this is the overflow in our gymnasium. And when we're able to do it, when we do get into phase 2 of our approach for the high school, what you see here will pretty much be replicated on the other side of the gymnasium. And then we'll also be able to outfit a larger tent with 50 desks at 6 foot every direction separation, all facing one way. Anything you want to add to that, gentlemen? Is that pretty explanatory? Yeah, okay. All right, so again, just the phasing. So the committee and everyone listening at home has this fresh in their mind as we do move into the discussion about it. Students at the students at the middle school on the 5th will return for full in-person learning 5 days a week, full days with lunch. And then on April 5th, students at Cohasset High School, all of them, will return for in-person learning. They'll be dismissed at 12:45 p.m. They'll eat lunch at home and join their class via Zoom from 1:55 to 2:55 p.m. 5 days a week. April 5th or April break is a temporary phase in the high school till we can be completely prepared for phase 2. One thing to note about this, on April 5th, all high school students will be able to receive a grab and go lunch. And this will obviously have an effect on our Boston students, but I'll talk about that in a second. So phase 2, which really impacts just the high school in terms of a change. Notice that I put in bold option 1. We still have option 2 here just in case, but we're feeling more confident that option 1 is what we're going to be able to do. In fact, very confident at this point. So in phase 2, and this will be April 26th, right after break, students at the high school will return for full in-person learning in one of two possible scenarios, emphasizing the first. Students will be served lunch in the gymnasium and outside tent area. And of course, I should say the cafeteria. Cafeteria, obviously, they're going to be served lunch in the cafeteria too. They'll be dismissed at 2:40 p.m., participating in all classes in person, and thus making the 5.5 hours of in-person learning, which will be required by the commissioner. I should note at this point that just staying in phase one for our high school students, whenever the 5.5 is mandated, if we stayed in that model, we would not meet it. So, in the waiver opportunities, really, I don't think they'd be afforded to us based on my conversations and the commissioner's reportings. So that's our option that we feel will most likely happen, and still keeping this other option on here just in case. Option 2 is that students would be served or can bring in a snack, and it'll be dismissed at 2 p.m. So if we can't for some reason safely afford the lunch areas, then we would figure out a way to do this, and it would be just a slightly earlier dismissal. We'll get into bus transportation in a minute, but remember that at every level, at every one of these times, whether it be pickup or dismissal, we will have buses available for the students who signed up for them. The phasing approach, just so everyone has a real good handle on what the logic of it is, really the first bullet is the big thing. It allows us the time to have all the ordered furniture in. We're not alone. There's so many schools in the Commonwealth who are scrambling for furniture right now, and Sue Owen is doing a great job leading this, and we'll be ready to go, but it's going to take some time to get everything in, and just be ready for it. We are also in the process of looking at ordering with the help of some of our community members, and thank you to them. Maybe at some point I'll be able to officially thank them and acknowledge them. But we are looking at a larger 40 by 80 tent, very big tent, that we would put in our back field. The exact location will be strategically decided upon based on the activities we have going around there. But this will be an excellent space, and this tent would have a floor, and it would have sides, and it would be, a really nice tent, one that someone could get married in. It would be that nice. But we want to make sure we have a good area that's structurally sound and ready for our students. And this would be attended to by the company who puts it up. This wouldn't be something that we provide maintenance for. And also the phased option allows for some after-school offerings to continue with the high school as planned, and it allows our lunch staff to make the adjustments that are safe for all students. So scheduling at the middle school, and I don't think we need to spend too much time on this, but Principal Mills, maybe just a very brief overview again, so it's fresh in people's mind about what we'll be doing starting on the 5th if this is voted on and approved.
Yeah, obviously April 5th, the biggest change is all our kids coming back. Beyond that, there aren't really significant changes. Our schedule is pretty much maintained just for consistency's sake for the kids. We did add a lunch because we'll have more kids in the school eating lunches, so there'll be 3 lunches. We shifted, we still had 7 periods. We shifted the period 4 from after lunch to before lunch based on the feedback from faculty and teachers. I'm sorry, faculty and students. We only we shortened passing up a little bit and just took a minute or 3 minutes off periods. So as our kids come back April 5th, it's going to be a very familiar schedule.
Right, and I think that as Principal Mills is referencing, that the shortening of the periods does allow us to provide the buses getting out of here in a timely fashion to be able to drop off and then go to our elementary school to pick up those kids. It was a little tight based on the fact that we have some staggered starts at the elementary school, and our bus ridership, although fairly good, isn't as full as it typically is on a regular year. So we want to account for that time that we need to provide busing at both levels. So at the high school, and again, this is in a phased model. So just as Principal Mills did, if you want to just quickly talk about this, Principal Scott, that'd be great.
Yeah, so same thing. We've made very few changes to our schedule since September, which is good. That kind of consistency is really important for maintaining progress. So we've done a couple of minor changes. We delayed the start time to help with traffic. We've cut down the longer break periods between 9:15 and 9:25 and between 10:25 and 10:35 to cut down on that unstructured movement time, which is really difficult to regulate. And really the rest of it is the same.
Right,
in
and as you can,
phase one.
and I think Principal Scott, as you mentioned before, the rotating schedule allows for at least those 2 weeks, and this is what the schedule is. It's a 2-week schedule. It allows that last period to be different each day at home. So that's just a fair, I think.
Yeah, so that rotation is the same that we put in. It's not our typical rotation, which drops one.
Right,
And we felt like we could do a drop schedule and lengthen the periods, but we just wouldn't get that much bang for the buck. We keep the routine, keep the schedule. In this particular phase, we're talking about 2 classes over 2 weeks, not including whatever half days or holidays we might have in there. So I think there's really kind of minimal disruption to those last period classes as well.
exactly. No, that's great. Thank you. And then phase 2, this is the scenario after break. This is scenario 1, but again, this is the scenario that we're really looking at right now.
Right, so phase 2 keeps the same schedule. Instead of dismissing for lunch, we have 2 shortened lunches and a little bit more of an earlier release, keeping the same amount of class time for everyone.
Excellent. And then again, I did mention this other scenario that would be probably a class by class breakdown of when the snack would be. And we'd have to articulate that so that it was really safe, just a little trickier to do. I don't know if you want to elaborate at this point on this, Principal Scott.
Yeah, I mean, this is a model that works conceptually and some schools are doing it. It's really a long time to go without a meal. High school kids, they get antsy. And, so to have a structured snack and not just make it a free for all, you really almost need to just build in a lunch during the day. So if you're going to do that, you might as well serve lunch. Otherwise, you can spread kids way out and, try to monitor it that way. But it's much more difficult to operationalize than I think people realize if we want to have snack or some kind of snack at the same time, which is what we typically do.
Yeah, and I didn't take this off because, technically, as this phase is until the 26th, if I needed to, I could come back on the 7th of April to the committee and talk about this option if something changes. But at this point, we're not moving towards this. Transportation drop-off, remember that we do have a staggered drop-off. Our middle school students will by car and by bus will be coming in at 8:15. Our high school students who will be on the bus in the morning at 8:15 will be able to come into the school and will be supervised by the teachers whose day starts at 8:15. However, we will have our students who are being dropped off, and in particular, our students who are driving coming in at 8:30, which will alleviate some of the pressure regarding the drop-off situation. And then just as a reminder that buses will be available for the Cohasset High School students whose families indicated on the survey they need a bus at dismissal, and the middle school students whose families indicated that they need a bus at dismissal. During early dismissal, there are 2 after April 5th. I believe one is, when is it? It's like the first week, I believe. We will have both high school and middle school students riding home at 12:30 on the buses they take in the morning. And then the bus routes, bus routes and stops will be communicated in the coming days, certainly in the next few days. And just so everyone has this fresh in their mind again about what the drop-off scenarios will look like, at this point, we're going to use the gymnasium driveway, which is a longer driveway. It affords us more spacing. It'll be more of a typical drop-off we had last year. Cars dropping off, other than the stagger, as I mentioned, but both of them using the gymnasium driveway. And then bus pickup would be at 12:45 for at least from April 5th through April break. There'll be bus routes for those students. They'll be articulated and sent. And then if we do move to after break, April 26th, if that's voted on, 2:40 p.m. Again, pickup will happen by cars at that gymnasium driveway for both schools. Boston students, remember, just so you have this in your mind, that the bus would continue for Boston students at the current times. There'd be supervision, just like there is for all students, for high school students who are Boston students coming in at 8:15 until 8:30. Lunch will be served to all Boston students each day. Lunch will be supervised. That really, I put this in there because of the 2-week period when we aren't going to be able to transport our Boston high school students back, our high school students who are from Boston back to Boston at 12:45. We would have them in the building, give them a lunch. We would supervise them from 12:45 till the end of the day for that 2-week period. They'd have a place to Zoom into their last period class. That place would also be, we're going to allow skipper school to continue for those 2 weeks because some of our staff will need that coverage just for the 2-week period right now. That's what we're looking at, but that'll make for a very kind of mixed group in there, which I think would be great. And then the high school and middle school Boston students will continue to ride the bus together because we can't afford that separate bus route. And then middle school Boston students will just stay on their regular schedule from April 5th on. Just some other logistics. Remember, skipper school, as I just mentioned, will continue at least for the 2 weeks before April break. We'll be looking to provide PACs to spaces that may be used during the next phase that meet the requirements for needing a PAC through our BALA readings. We are very much advocating for tight-fitting masks. They're important, and we would absolutely entertain the suggestion of having 2 masks for students who might not have a tight-fitting mask. We certainly will have them available for folks who need them. And then just a couple of more. I mentioned about quarantining and how we're going to approach that. The implementation of special education services for all our students will follow all of the safety and social distancing protocols, and it's still going to meet the required services outlined in the IEPs. And just the timeline, I won't go over this because it's already happened, but just a minute to kind of remember where we started and where we are now. And you can see where we are now. March 24th, delivery of the final presentation for vote. And then from March 25th through April 1st, we're really looking at staff and students being able to orient to and discuss implementation plans. Bus routes and stops will be communicated to families. And final furniture moving, which is already happening, will continue right up until, hopefully the week before the April 5th in-person date. And then we'll fully implement on April 5th. And that is it. So at this point, I will stop my share and turn it over to you, Chair McClellan. Look, we did it in half an hour. I knew we could do it. So I'll let you open it up for any discussions you want at this point.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation, Dr. Sullivan. At this point, I would ask for a motion from the committee to open it up to discussion from the members of the community prior to any sort of school committee deliberations or vote. Is there a motion to that effect on the floor?
So moved.
So moved. Sorry.
Motion made by Mrs. St. Ange, seconded by Mr. Kearney.
Yes, please.
All in favor, please indicate so. And roll call, Mrs. Cleary.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mrs. Marr.
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye, Craig McClellan, that motion unanimously carries. So we'll move to any sort of public or community member feedback at this point or questions. Let me check. Where am I? Okay, I don't see any, so we're going to move on to school committee deliberations, starting in reverse alphabetical order, unless Mrs. St. Ange is unprepared for that. Just figure we'll mix it up and let her go first this time around.
I'm ready this time. I don't really have any questions per se, just a few comments. I just heard from a few community members this past week about just concern about timing and April vacation coming up. And I guess I just want to use my time to say that I feel that that you, Dr. Sullivan, and your plan and the teachers and principals are doing everything they can to make this a safe reentry. And we as community members need to be so careful, you know, with April vacation coming up, and we've all been pretty good about staying home. Just, I hope that people continue to mind travel orders. And if you do go somewhere to get tested, it's so easy to do. And I know some people are, I guess, well, middle and high school kids are older, but I don't know. I've had my little kids tested so often this year. It's just so easy. I just encourage everyone to do that so that we can keep everybody safe when we are, you know, in a more crowded setting. So I just wish everyone, I want to get the kids back to school, and I want to do it safely. And I just hope in numbers that everyone's taking responsibility for their own families and making sure we're doing it in the safest way. And that is my comment.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to reiterate that this all is very fragile, and it hinges on the collective responsibility of everyone. So I just, as someone who very much wants this to happen and succeed, it's really dependent on how we go about it and keep our kids, you know, we've done that throughout this, keep our kids center in all the decisions we make to make sure they can come back safely, and we continue this. That's everything for this plan. So thank you for saying that.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. St. Ange. Moving on, Mrs. Marr, would you like to make any comments this time?
Nope, no comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Marr. Mr. Kearney, would you like to make any comments, sir?
Well, yes, I'd like to thank the leadership again, Dr. Sullivan, exceeding expectations, and just want to know that as a middle school, high school parent, we are thrilled that our children will be able to see their friends that they haven't been able to see just because of their alphabetical last name. But it's going to be exciting to see them again, because this is just a good time. And Lydia, I want to echo what you're saying too. It's everybody still be careful, understand that it's still real out there. And we don't want to go backwards. We just want to go forwards. And this is a proactive way to keep our kids with their social and emotional learning and keeping it good. And I just got to say, I'm thrilled and appreciated and grateful. I also want to say to the committee members, you know, this is a voluntary position, and I appreciate each and every one of them for what they have done. And they've really stepped up as a community, and I'm so proud of us as a team. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And you mentioned students and they're, you know, that they're happy to come back and be around their friends more fully. And I know both Principal Mills and Principal Scott have been talking to and surveying and gathering thoughts from students. I was able to share some of that with you in the committee recently. And I also met with my student advisory committee and had a really, I thought, important session that was very helpful to me. So we're very much looking at that student voice, and I think you all deserve a lot of credit for all the work you're doing too. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kearney, as usual, for those very kind expressions of gratitude that typically come from you. Moving on, Mrs. Colery, any comments?
I do not. I would like to second what Mrs. St. Ange said and thank Mr. Kearney.
Okay, that leaves us with me. I have nothing to add at this point. I see no other questions or comments from the community. I think that everyone is ready and eager to hear a vote. So is there a motion to give final approval to the administration's plan to return our middle and high school students to their buildings on a full-time basis?
So moved.
Motion is made by Mrs. Marr. Is it seconded?
I'll second it. Second.
Seconded by Mr. Kearney. All in favor? Mrs. Colery.
Aye.
Mr. Kearney.
Aye.
Mrs. Marr.
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange.
Aye.
Aye. Craig McClellan. Dr. Sullivan. That motion unanimously carries, and we would ask you to please implement your plan. Thank you so much for all of your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you for your efforts. And I also a big thank you to the leadership, staff, the students and families. So thank you all. We'll keep moving, and we'll move on to the next phase in this and get through it together.
Quite a year. So,
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
okay, well, to move on to the next item on the superintendent's report, this was a carryover from last year. Dr. Sullivan, last week, and I just was hesitant to, or reluctant to have a vote on it because it wasn't something that was on the agenda. So now it's on the agenda. Could you sort of summarize, just to sort of reiterate what it's all about here?
Sure, I will. And then, of course, Sue, if I misspeak, please jump in. But what we're looking for is the ability to open up our outside spaces, our fields. And I know that once in a while, someone will look to use a parking lot or something like that, to outside groups, just so outside spaces to outside groups to use beginning immediately through the, and then through the foreseeable future. We'd like to keep our inside spaces closed to the public through the rest of the school year, but we would like to open them up for the summer for potential use. So again, to summarize that, we'd like to open up our outside fields immediately and parking lots if that was something that was somebody wanted to put a form in. We'd like to keep our inside spaces closed to the end of the year, and we'd like to open up our indoor spaces beginning after school ends. And that's what we're here to vote for.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Any comments from the school committee? Mrs. Caleri? Mr. Kearney?
No, supportive.
Mrs. Marr? Mrs. St. Ange?
No comments.
I have no comments either. So it seems like everyone probably is in agreement with Dr. Sullivan's plan, but let's vote on that. Is there a motion to approve Dr. Sullivan's recommendation that we open outdoor facilities throughout the remainder of the school year and open indoor facilities to outside groups starting at the end of the school year or after the end of the school year in the summer months? Is there a motion to that effect on the floor?
So
Is there a
moved.
question before we do that?
Oh, no, I was just moving.
See.
Motion, yes,
I'm like an
yes.
auctioneer, Mrs. Aaron, so it's like, is there any
Yeah.
movement?
So moved,
right.
yes.
Motion made by Mrs. St. Ange. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Caleri. All in favor, Mrs. Caleri? Did you say aye?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Mr. Kearney?
Aye.
Mrs. Marr?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange?
Aye.
Aye. Craig McClellan, Dr. Sullivan, that motion unanimously carries. And we
Wonderful.
would ask you to please implement that
We
policy.
will. Thank you very much.
Okay. Does that conclude the superintendent's report for this special school committee meeting?
It definitely does. I just want to thank once again Principal Scott and Principal Mills, but it does conclude the report.
Yes, thank you all. Okay, moving on. There are, to my knowledge, no other topics to be addressed during this meeting. Unless someone disagrees with that, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to seek a motion to adjourn in perhaps record time here. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Cleary. Motion made by Mrs. Cleary. Is there a second to the motion to adjourn?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. St. Ange. All in favor, Mrs. Cleary?
Aye.
Mr. Kearney?
Aye.
Mrs. Marr?
Aye.
Mrs. St. Ange?
Aye.
Aye. Craig McClellan. That motion unanimously carries, and the meeting is hereby adjourned.
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a
all.
great night.
Congratulations.
Thank you.